Hello, friends. I've been asked to make a video of my spiritual journey to finding Christ. So I did make one that was about my adult life, but I thought that's so limited and incomplete. So I want to start by saying that my spiritual journey actually started when I was really, really little. Um, I lived in South San Francisco, and we lived across the street from all the cemeteries in Colma. And behind the cemeteries is a mountain called San Bruno Mountain. And when I was 3 years old, my grandma died, and I was very close to her, and it completely shattered me, actually. I felt very, very, very um, inconsolable. And my dad and I were in a car, and he said, I asked him, does everybody die? And he said, yes, everybody dies. And I just looked around and I thought, well, then this whole place it's not what it seems if we can all die. And so I said to my dad, well, then we're just all born to die. And he pretty much agreed with that. So about that time, maybe a few months later, I was out in my backyard really early one Sunday morning. Must have been a weekend because my parents were sleeping in. My little brother was still asleep. And I got up and I went outside because it was so warm and sunny. And the flowers were there. And I was just standing in my backyard and I was staring at the mountain. And I just got drawn in, I guess, by awe of the vastness and the greatness of that mountain. I popped out of my body and I felt expanded. My body felt expanded to all distances, backwards, forwards, up and down, to infinity. To infinity. My body felt like it enclosed the entire universe. And a thought arose, and it was, I have always been, and I always will be. And all I see, everything, is all only me. I am the self of all that is. There's no death. There's no threat. All the people, all the animals, processes, everything going on is just something that I decided to do. And I am the true self of everything and everyone. And after that thought came, it wasn't, the sense of it wasn't like big news or something that was shocking. It was like, oh yeah, I remember, like only a second ago I had forgotten. But it was just a remembering, oh yeah, that's how it works. That's all it is. I am the self of all. But then I popped back into my child body again. And then I identified again as just this personal little person, little girl. And I had that inside of me, that deep knowing and remembering, but it wasn't validated or reflected back to me by anybody in my life at that time. And so I would often go with my parents to, or my mom especially, to the duck pond and where the swans and ducks were over at the cemetery. The cemetery was absolutely beautiful. All the classical architecture and the beautiful swans and the rolling lawns, and we'd go there and feed the ducks. And I remember standing there and seeing, like, again, the vastness of the pond and the vastness of the rolling, and being drawn again into this amazing connectedness and feeling a presence that I didn't go so far as to identify as the inner me or anything like that, but it was the presence of divinity. I could feel it and I could see it in everything. And it was just there. It was obvious, especially in the sunshine, the sunlight, the light. And then in kindergarten, I have a really strong memory of sitting on the floor in kindergarten, and it was a warm day, so the doors were open, and our teacher was reading a book, and I just got distracted, completely distracted from what they were all doing, to this presence outside again in the sunshine. And I could feel it. There was a presence upholding and surrounding and permeating everything. And it was divine. It was way transcendent compared to what everybody was doing. And then my parents signed me up later on for Catholic catechism. And I went to catechism and I learned about Jesus and that he died on the cross to pay for our sins and such. None of that I learned reflected back to me any of my experience. They didn't say, and Jesus felt that, I am the truth and the way and the light. They said that, but they didn't say that we can all have that experience, that to wake up to that I am the self of all that. And Jesus did, obviously, but they didn't talk about it like that. They made it about receiving your first Holy Communion and obeying the 10 Commandments and, just being a good Catholic kid. And so I went along with that, and the rest receded into my background. And I went along with that until I was about age 15. And then I just couldn't stay in the Catholic Church anymore. I didn't want to be in any church. I had discovered, Led Zeppelin, rock music, the Beatles. And I mean, it was just far more expansive and more interesting to me than the cycle of Mass and confession and cycle of Mass and confession. And I had lost my childlike joy by that time, let me just say, and my ability to connect just through looking at the world. So I went along with all the other things that all the kids my age were doing. And this went on and on and on, and I had gotten married and I had a little child, and then I got divorced from her dad. He was kind of a violent person. And then I got remarried, and the person I married was Lutheran. It didn't bother me. I wasn't practicing anything. The fact that he wanted to go to the Lutheran church was fine with me. But I was really becoming deeply unhappy, and I didn't know what to do about it. I was just going through, I guess, what you could say is a dark night of the soul. I was getting very depressed, and I was very resentful. I was angry, critical, all those things. And so I went to a therapist this one particular day. It was March 11th, actually, 1981. And I told her, nobody seems real. Nothing's real. And she said, well, who's not real? I said, I think you want me to say that I'm not real, but that's not what it feels like to me. It feels like I'm real, but nobody else is real. Whatever that means. I don't even know what that meant, but that's how I felt. So I went home, and my husband told me that, I was so cranky and bitchy lately that he was fantasizing about going to Acapulco on a vacation, but without me. And so I could see, this is going to end in divorce. I can see this is just no good. I have no hope. And so I went into a quiet place in the house, and I just started crying really hard from my heart. And I was at my absolute bottom. And I just said, if you really exist, you have to show me, because I am dying down here. If you're real, let me know. I prayed to God. And I wasn't even praying to Jesus necessarily, because that time I wasn't even sure if that was even real. So what happened was I went to sleep, and then I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I lifted my head off the pillow, and I went, oh no, I'm still here. Not that I wanted to commit suicide, but I wanted that horrible, resentful, depressed, negative part of me to just be gone, just to be gone. And I sort of pulled away just enough, I feel like, in my psyche to just distance myself from that part. And in that instant, an incredible avalanche of love filled me, filled the room. I felt a presence in the room with me. And the love was for me, just as I was, completely. I saw that I was precious, and I had been precious, and I knew it was God loving me and feeling that I had been precious to God since before I was born. Before I was born, since the beginning of time. And I could tell that I had been alive in some form since the beginning of time, if maybe just a thought in God's head, since the beginning of time, and that I was absolutely loved. And I saw that God is only love, and it's vast, vast, vast love, and loves each and every one of us exactly that same way. And then I heard a voice say, forgive them, they know not what they do. And every face of every person that I had ever resented since my babyhood flashed in front of my face and then passed through my heart. And my heart was no longer negative. All that had washed away instantaneously. And in place of that was this beautiful heart of pure love. And they passed through my heart, and my heart blessed each and every one of them. And it went by in rapid, like nanoseconds of these people's faces until I was like up to date with everyone I had ever met, and at peace and loving every person I had ever met. And just tears of bliss and gratitude were streaming down my face. And I saw that the whole idea of us, any of us, being guilty or sinful or requiring any sort of punishment was completely a man-made human brain, mind construct. God was not even remotely thinking of us like that. In fact, I saw that the only reason anybody does anything evil, and to include someone like Hitler, is because they weren't and aren't experiencing the same love from God that I was experiencing. And as I lay there in my bed against my pillow, feeling this incredible love, I asked, what church should I go to? Because my husband was going to a Lutheran church and I had been Catholic. So I thought, well, it's going to be either Lutheran or Catholic. But the answer came, church is in your heart. And I could absolutely feel that. Church is in my heart. So after that, I felt led to read various books, spiritual books. And even though I felt Jesus who had come to me by saying, forgive them, they know not what they do. I know that was his Christian teaching. I was still felt led to read other books. And I read Be Here Now. And he said, if you really want to know what it's like in India, read the autobiography of a yogi. Now, another thing that happened to me when I was a little child, which made me want to read about India from Autobiography of a Yogi, was when I was about 5, somebody had given me a Rudyard Kipling book about just so stories from when Rudyard Kipling lived in Africa and India. And so I read all these books, these stories rather, and they had beautiful illustrations. And I was just, before I could even read the words, I would page through and look at the pictures. And I turned a page the first time I opened and looked through the book, and there was a story called The Elephant the Butterfly Who Stamped. And meaning stamped its foot. But the pictures, I opened it to that page, and there were a whole line of women dressed in saris. And on the other opposite page was a drawing of the Taj Mahal. And I tell you, when I saw that, my little heart just jumped out of my chest. And I saw those ladies in saris and the Taj Mahal, and I went, home, home, there's home, my home. I remember my home. So that was my experience. That was home. So when this, later on at 28, this guy says, Ram Dass, read Autobiography of Yogi to find out about the saints in India. I said, I want to read about India. I do. So I read it. And I loved Yogananda very much. And he loved Jesus very much. And Yogananda often talked about Christ, and that the Christian churches teach about the outside teachings of Jesus, but they have not preserved for very long the inside teachings of Jesus, like what the saints discover when they commune with the Christ internally in the mind of Christ. And how to do that. That's not taught. We're taught to pray the rosary, and we're taught to say the Our Father, or we're taught to go to Mass and receive Holy Communion, of course. But what to do to meet Christ internally, here and here, is not generally taught. So that really fascinated me, and because I always loved Jesus, and I loved that Yogananda had a picture of Jesus on the altar at the self-realization temples, along with Krishna and Babaji. So I did that for a while, but there was a feeling among the Hindu people that you really should get a human teacher, go to a guru and sit at the feet of a master and have him tell you and guide your meditation and guide your prayer life and guide all these things, like a spiritual director, what they would call a spiritual director in a Catholic church. But more than that, a guru is like, you see them, they're a saint usually, and then you follow everything they do just as if they were God on earth. So I tried to do that, and I found two, actually. One Hindu master in a human body I was with for 13 years, and then he succumbed to the temptations of money, sex, women, wealth, power, all those things. And so I was completely disinterested after that. And fortunately, I didn't get too deeply into the politics of it. I just stayed with, the meditation and such. And then I was really disillusioned, so I stayed away from that. But then our daughter was interested in the Ananda school, and so we put her in the Ananda school, and we went and lived at the Ananda community, which was an offshoot of Yogananda's original self-realization community. This was called Ananda, started by Swami Kriyananda. And I had not really any interest in Swami Kriyananda. I just wanted to live in a place where there was a meditation hall and that we could go to church on Sunday and all meditate together, and my daughter could learn meditation and yoga and things like that, and be in a very safe, loving community, which was great. But then too, right as we were living there, Kriyananda got accused by a cohort of about 50 women who hired an attorney and said that he had molested them and had been completely inappropriate with them, took advantage of them during massage or a yoga session or something like that, any kind of private audience with him at his house. And they were really young girls at the time. And so anyway, now they were older. They went to court. They won. He admitted it in court. And then, so my husband and I felt this guy, this place, this is no good. So I was watering the yard in our little condo there in the community right about that time. And I've always had a connection with hummingbirds. They come to me a lot, especially if I'm praying or something. So I saw a hummingbird way across on the other side of the yard. And I said to God, if you're leading me out of this community, let that little hummer come over and hum right in front of my eye right now. And it came right here and it went right there for a few seconds. And I said, okay, I get your message. Thank you. And my husband and I started looking for a house to buy. And sooner than later, we found this house and we moved here about 20 years ago. And once I got here, a friend of mine that I'd known from another community said, hey, there's this really great guy who follows Gangaji, and he's a wonderful meditative teacher and all that. Let's have you introduce you to him. I said, okay. So we did, and we started following that group. And then again, that guy started being all egotistical, started feeling like he wanted everyone's money and adoration, and he had wanted power, and the writing was on the wall for me. Again, this guy, no more. So then I swore off gurus, no more human teachers. That was in 2003. No more. So then I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to live in the world. I'm going to do whatever I want. And I'll pray to God, but I'm not going to be involved in anything anymore at all. So I got very much involved in just my daily life, like we all do. And then December of 2018, I was feeling more and more like I wanted a real Christmas. I didn't want to have, Frosty the Snowman and Jingle Bells and all that playing on the radio all the time. I asked my husband, this Christmas time, can we just play like real traditional, like maybe medieval Christmas music and even Gregorian chant type of Christmas music? And he said, sure, let's do that. So we were doing that. And so it was really elevating me, my awareness and my consciousness. It really was. And then one night after everybody went to bed, I wasn't even listening to Christmas music, but I was listening to this English country dance from the 17th century, like a playlist on YouTube. And it got to this one song, and it was so uplifting and so joyful. I was just feeling it so much that my awareness expanded again. And I felt God. I felt God in my heart like I hadn't felt in many years. And I looked around my room, and in a painting that I've had for 20 years, I saw two little bluebirds, and I had never even noticed them. But my awareness opened up, and I could see the beauty and the detail and everything in the now, in the present now of that moment. And so the next morning, I went and I knelt in front of a picture of Jesus that I have in my room above my bed, and I knelt there. And I was just feeling devotion, just devotion to him, because I'm really naturally a devotee, what the Hindus call a bhakti, somebody whose path to God is through the heart and through devotional feeling and great love. Not so much the mind, but through the heart. And Jesus is also, I believe, a devotee to God, but through the heart. And that's why we have the pictures of his sacred heart. And I can totally relate to that. So I was kneeling there and feeling such devotion for him when his painting came alive for just 2 or 3 seconds at most. And he breathed with me. And now it was over. But I felt him completely alive and present as himself, as Jesus. And so I thought, I really want to be out of the closet about my love for Jesus. And I want to go where people love Jesus as much as I do. And I thought, well, where could that be? And I thought, well, a Catholic church maybe, because look at all the saints that have come up through the Catholic Church that have had blissful experiences of Jesus and have realized him and have performed miracles and done what he did. And so I'll go there. So I went to St. Michael's Church in Boulder Creek, and I met with the priest there. And I said, I need to go to confession. I haven't been to confession in 50 years. And so he met me in the church. It was all dark. We were all by ourselves. We sat in the front row in front of the tabernacle. And I made my confession. And I told him about my experience in 1981, where I got blasted wide open with the vastness of love of God. And he said, you're very, very fortunate to have such an experience at such a young age. And he said, to hear this is like what priests live for, to have somebody come back to church and confess after 50 years and to say this kind of thing. And I told him my experience was that sometimes, and still today, sometimes I look around and I see all there is God. It's only God. There's nothing else besides God. It's all only God. And God is only love. And he looked at me and said, of course, of course. And I said, and I saw that guilt is just in our minds. And that we're guilty of anything is only in our minds. And Father Bob said, of course, of course. So he knew and saw what I knew and saw. And he said to me, for your penance, I want you to always keep a really good spiritual book next to your bed. And I want you to spend 30 minutes every morning contemplating and meditating on God. That's your penance. So that's when I started that. And then now what happened was Father Bob